Hey everyone, I want to talk about my worst setbacks, how they happened, a little bit of a background about setbacks, how we really fall into that trap of this isn't fair, I don't deserve this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And we really easily fall into victim mentality, which I fell into a lot. It's very easy to do when you're doing well for a while, then you wake up one day for no reason and you feel like you're back at square one. That's why we talk about this so much. Again, I have another outline here where I'm going to talk about 3 different examples of really bad setbacks I had, why they were all different in their own particular ways, and hopefully you can relate to some of these. And then we'll just go from there. Before I go any further, please subscribe, hit that like button down below. Let me know about your setbacks. Maybe you're having one right now and you feel a little bit stuck. If you need some help, please reach out to phil@ocdrecovery.com and we'll get back to you in a timely fashion. So I want to talk about well, first of all, it really doesn't actually matter what we call a setback or a backdoor spike or a relapse. It's just important to know that we're always moving in a particular direction in our lives, right? Time goes one way until we invent a time machine. Time is moving in one direction, which is really scary for people to hear because they have the fears of wasting time, existential OCD. So it doesn't really matter what we call it, but it is important to state that we are all going to have many relapses, setbacks, and backdoor spikes on our journey to OCD and anxiety recovery. And every time we have a setback or a backdoor spike, it's another opportunity to learn. It's another opportunity to strengthen the tools from the reading list, right? You know, this book is not just something that you skim read. This book will teach you how to handle setbacks, how to handle relapses, why changing our perspectives on those setbacks and relapses, which is stemming from conditional life acceptance. Let's just use a real quick example right quick. On the DIB sheet, page 96, 97. So the activating event would be a setback or a relapse. The belief is it's absolutely terrible to have a relapse. I can't stand this. It's the worst thing ever. There's nothing worse than having a relapse. And that goes over to all the unhealthy things surrounding relapses. So, going down the pity party, hating it, saying to yourself, I can't stand this. This is the worst thing ever. And going from there. And then you want to look at that and say, look, I really prefer if I didn't have relapses. They're not as bad as I thought they were. Yes, it's really frustrating to think you're back at square one. How could I learn from this, et cetera, et cetera. And like I said, one of the number one things you want to do is decrease the complaining that you have about anything, really. My sensory motor setbacks, all those I had to decrease the complaining, the body dysmorphia, all the panic sensations, physical symptoms of anxiety. I had to change my perspective on all of those. And then over time, it started to make a lot more sense that complaining about them really did myself a massive injustice because I was living in almost a fantasy land trying to convince myself that this shouldn't be happening to me, especially when I had read all the books on the reading list. And I was like, hey, look, I've read all the books. I know the material. This should not be happening to me. So I want to go into 3 different places where I had really bad setbacks, and they set me back for a very long time until I stopped changing. Stopped doing some compulsions and had to change my beliefs. A lot of these setbacks and relapses are stemming from coasting scenarios where you're saying, wow, I'm no longer on the coast. A lot of people that come in, if you have chronic OCD and you haven't gone through the pits of absolute suffering, which most of us have, but I have a lot of people that are like, I'm really doing pretty good right now. Excuse me. And I sit down and talk to them, and I can tell in a pretty quick fashion, they're probably giving into compulsions. They're probably giving into avoidance behaviors. They're venting a lot. Most people think OCD, including myself, is a lot more simple than it actually is, and that's what really keeps us stuck. So the first one I want to talk about is after I relapsed on adult websites after 200 plus days of not using it. Now, people always ask me what my opinion is on pornography, and I say I'm not pro, I'm not pro or against pornography, right? There's pros and cons to everything in life. There's pros and cons to opium. If we didn't have opiates, that would be really hard to manage some terminal cancers. with a lot of pain. When my dad had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, which tends to be a very painful cancer, he was prescribed Oxycontin 80s, which a lot of people are unfortunately very addicted to. And we work with people who suffer with addictions and stuff like that. We help co-manage their OCD as well. And a lot of the principles that we teach them can go over into addictions. That's why I wanted to use my particular problems with these websites. And when I relapsed, what happened was I had relapsed and I was feeling really good. So I had convinced myself I could use it again. As soon as I used it, I felt all those old feelings coming back. All the pull to do all the other behaviors I'd have, messaging other women, going behind my wife's back, and all that stuff. It came flooding back very quickly, and I thought, I'm screwed. And I knew I was screwed. So what I did was what we all do. Well, I already used it, so I'm going to use it for the next 5 hours straight. And then for 3 days straight, I used it for, 4 hours in total, and it set me back for about 6 months. It wasn't a horrific 6 months, but the first 60 days were really brutal. And I knew it was going to be brutal because I gave into one of my biggest compulsions. Now, again, is pornography inherently bad for OCD? The way I used it, and I used it as a coping mechanism, deleting it out of my life forever was the best thing I ever did. I'm now almost 20 months pornography free. And I think that's been the best decision for me. You have to make the decision yourself. It's changed a lot about my frustration tolerance. It's changed a lot for my marriage. And just the way I view the world has been a really good thing. But I'm not going to go too much into detail about that in this video. But it was definitely, this is really difficult. I think if you use pornography compulsively the way I did, your brain already correlates that as a compulsion. It's not waiting for your permission. It's already like, okay, so Nick uses this when he's stressed. It's a compulsion. The end. And then people are like, well, can I do the same thing with exercise? It can, but because there's healthy habits with exercise, I think it's easier to get away from that from the body dysmorphia perspective and continue exercising and bodybuilding, where pornography really offers very little benefits to your life. Again, it's not totally inherently bad, but it just really needs to be watched. But I like saying gone for now doesn't mean gone forever. I definitely had short-term depression with this. I was really down and really berating myself. And this lasted for about 6 months on and off. The next one I want to talk about was right when I made some really serious progress with sensory motor OCD. So this is when you're doing really well with a particular fear pattern. And I thought, you know what? I can handle these sensations for the remainder of my life. It's not the end of the world. I definitely dislike them, but there's been much worse things out there. I can notice my blinking, my saliva, my breathing chronically 24/7 for the remainder of my life. Dislike that, but it wouldn't be the worst thing ever. And then body dysmorphia came in full blown. And when body dysmorphia came in full blown, that was a very, very tough thing for me. I think that setback, I don't even know if you want to consider it a setback because it was a brand new thing, but that lasted for almost a year, really badly. I had a lot of compulsions that was leaving under the rug. The rug got pulled out from under my feet. Everything became apparent. It became a really, really big problem. That led to extreme body dysmorphia fears, and it wasn't a good time. I really had to change my perception with my physique. I had to change my perception with being accepted for not looking the way I wanted to, and everything else in between. It is very important to highlight that no amount of self-help from conditional stuff such as building muscle, having a six-pack, having more money, that will not move you any closer to unconditional self-acceptance. The only way you develop unconditional self-acceptance is practicing unconditional self-acceptance. Some of the most depressed, anxious, and neurotic people I've ever met are people in the fitness industry, and it's riddled with that because they don't know this stuff, which is really unfortunate. The third one I want to talk about is something that many people can relate to, and that was after Ultra Music Festival, one time when I got back. This was also in 21 as well. This was overlapping with when I was doing better from the relapse with the pornography. I had a really good time at Ultra. Everything felt very blissful. I came back. The second my plane landed, boom. That's because I thought, I'm over this. I'm done. It's never coming back. This can never get me again. And then that really, really got me stuck. And I was very cocky. I was naive. I wrote, I did it. It instilled a lot of humility in me. Why me? I know the tools. This shouldn't be happening to me. And I had to have a willingness to experience all setbacks, which means I could have the worst setback of my life right now. That would be very unfortunate. Remember, agreement doesn't mean acceptance, but I have to become very comfortable with those in the meantime. And there's nothing else you can really do when you're having a setback or a relapse except for wear it. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Let's do a quick summary. Remember, setbacks and relapses, whatever we call them, are opportunities to learn. Relapsing on pornography came from me giving into my addiction, saying like, hey, look, I think I'm good now. We see a lot of people do this with drugs and alcohol. It's very unfortunate. The sensory motor, right when you think you're making progress with a particular theme or fear pattern, boom. And then when you go somewhere on vacation, you think you had a great time on the vacation, you came back and you're like, oh my gosh, it's coming down and crashing in my head. So thank you so much for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will be doing a lot more outlines in my videos as I think this is very important. If you have any questions, please ask. I'll go into that. I always like engaging with the OC community. And if you need help, again, remember, phil@ocdrecovery.com, and we'll get back to you in a timely fashion. Thank you so much, and as always, enjoy the rest of your day.